Welcome from Canvas. Here we are in the directions section for the Udo Hagen final project for the musical Into the Woods. Now, for this project, you will be thinking as though you are a major character in the musical. And for this particular project, we're going to limit our choices to the baker, the baker's wife, the witch, Jack, and Little Red Riding Hood. This makes life a little bit easier because all of these characters are dynamic, meaning they have undergone some type of emotional change throughout the story. Now, one important thing here, we are going to think about how our character has changed from Act 1 because we are going to be placing our character in Act 2. I'll say that again. We are going to be placing our character in Act 2. Now, this is important because that way you can reflect on all of the things that have happened to you as the character in Act 1. So again, we're placing our character in Act 2. Now, all of the answers should then relate to what the character knows during that scene. So you're going to pick a particular scene in Act 2 to base your character, and then you're talking about what your character has learned and knows from what has happened to them in Act 1. Now, as we already have discussed, Uta Hagen was a German actress who taught the theory behind acting for many years in New York City. So your job is to answer the 9 character questions that Uta Hagen has created as a particular character from the play, and then answer the final reflection question, which has to do with whether or not your character, or not whether or not, has to do with why your character is dynamic and round. Now, this is important. All of your questions should be answered in first person. So instead of saying my best friend is, or I'm sorry, instead of saying Jack's best friend is a cow, you would say my best friend is a cow. Now, some of the questions cannot be answered using information given in the play. So you're going to have to use the information that you know about the character based on what we've read in the text, and then add in a dash of your own creativity to answer the questions the way you think your character would. So your journal should reference information in the text as much as possible. Now, you'll be using the Uta Hagen template, which contains around 270 words. So on top of the 270 words in the template, each response, so each question, should have around 150 words. As you work through this, you'll find that it's pretty easy to hit the 150 word criteria because you're talking as though you are the character. Now, the questions, we'll go through these individually so that you have a good idea of what to respond to for each particular question. Who am I? Basically, this is all the details about your character. Now, there are a lot of things listed there in this particular parentheses item, but you just want to think about who is your character and how are these various items important. You don't have to use all of the items in the comma series here. You can just use 1 or 2 if that's all you need to answer this particular question. But if you're thinking about the character of Jack, the age would be important because Jack is a younger character. The likes and dislikes, obviously Jack loves his cow, Milky White. The career piece, Jack doesn't really have a job. He just helps out around his house. So as you can see right there, there's a couple items where you can use those recommendations to help you answer the question, who am I? Moving on to number 2, what time is it? Now, this is the time in which you have chosen to base your character. So, since we're in Act 2 at this point, if you're, again, we're the character of Jack and you were sitting up in a tree waiting to try and kill the Lady Giant, you would definitely talk about how it's probably, later on in the day, perhaps later on that evening. And so the significance of time would be important because if you're waiting up in a tree all day and it's a little cold, you would talk about how you really want to get this deed over with so you can climb out of the tree and go back to your house where it's warm. Now, item number 3, where am I? You can be really creative with this. If you want to set Into the Woods in medieval Europe, this is the time to talk about where you are at. If you want to set Into the Woods in modern day America, in the state of Pennsylvania, you can talk about what and where you are within the state of PA. The area of the room, if you're inside a house or a cottage and the cottage has been destroyed by a lady giant, you would talk about the room that you're in and what it looks like after it has been demolished. Now, item number 4, what surrounds me? This could be the setting, as in, again, you're sitting up in a tree or perhaps in a cottage, or it could be the other characters that are around you. This is where you could talk about your feelings towards the other characters, even if the other characters don't know your feelings towards them. Now, number 5, this piece has 3 parts, and again, the 3 parts, 150 words for all 3 pieces. So you might have um, 50 words for the past, 50 words for the present, and 50 for the future. Or you might have 100 for the past and maybe 25 for the present and then 25 for the future. So in the past, you're talking about what has happened in Act 1. For the present, you're talking about what is happening to the character in the current situation. Excuse me for that typo there. And for the future, you will be talking about what will happen to the character. So this will, again, depend on where you choose to base your character in Act 2. Number 6, what are my relationships? This could be your character's relationships to other characters within the play or connections to particular items. For instance, if you're the witch, you would have a connection to your garden and all of the wonderful vegetables that are growing within it. Number 7, what do I want? This is the character's need, their immediate and main objective. So, what is the character motivated for? Now, again, your character is based in Act 2, so your character's need or main objective has changed a little bit since Act 1 of Into the Woods. So, think about what is the character trying to accomplish during this portion of the play. I'll give you a hint. You want to look in Act 2, Scene 1 towards the beginning to give yourself a little more information about what your character wants at this point in the play. Number 8, what is in my way? And this has to do with conflict. So what item or items are impeding or holding your character back from getting what they want? Number 9, what do I do to get what I want? This is the resolution to your character's conflict. So what action or what deed does your character need to complete or do in order to solve their problem? Now, think about the physical actions, so maybe climbing a beanstalk and killing a giant, or the verbal actions that your character must do. Maybe they need to go visit someone and apologize to them for their feelings towards, or their negative feelings towards a character during a certain point in the play. Finally, item number 10, the reflection piece. This is where you are explaining how your character is dynamic and round. So think about everything that your character has been through since the beginning of the play in Act 1, Scene 1. What did your character learn and how did those lessons change their personality? Now, you can still answer this question in character, so you can say, I am a dynamic character because of these changes that have occurred in my life since the beginning of Act 1. It's perfectly okay to remain in character for the reflection question. So, there you have the instructions and the thought process behind each of the Uta Hagen questions for the Into the Woods final project.